So to fulfill the requirements issued in the RFP, we have initially created a core structure of a full-time operational manager, a full-time technical director, a currently part-time educational director, which is one of our challenges, and then a part-time social media coordinator. Those roles are pretty self-descriptive. The social media coordinator is a very important person because there are several times over the course of the week that the entire staff, full and part-time, are working on projects. All three of us will be in providing technical support on a studio production or in a studio lab. Someone's teaching a class, someone's working on programming, someone's interacting. We've got multiple things happening at once. So we feel like in those moments, especially when our educational director is teaching classes and when our technical director is facilitating some sort of studio production, we want someone at the front desk to greet people, answer their questions, and handle those sorts of things. So that person sits there and receives people for us. While they're sitting there, they also serve as our social media coordinator, working with our Facebook page, specifically to reach out to organizations that could be involved with public access, let them know about the resources that are available, and to maintain our presence on social media.
How many hours a week does that person work?
10. Currently 8, and I'm proposing an increase to 10 hours a week.
What do we pay them?
$10 an hour.
And it's mostly in the evenings.
And it is in the evenings.
Yes.
Would part-time salary qualify for benefits?
No.
It does not.
So the education director would increase to a full-time position with benefits.
That is what
The
I
social media coordinator still
would
part-time
Stay part-time, yep,
without benefits.
that's correct. So with the fixed budget, we've had to recruit employees at rates significantly less than industry comparable positions or even comparable city positions. And then with the current fixed budget, the service provider, whoever they were, would be unable to recruit and retain qualified individuals for these roles in the future. And I can speak from experience that we had a great director of education who I brought in at the part-time position. He was very qualified, he really enjoyed the work, but then he got offered another position in Little Rock that met his qualifications at a significantly larger, I just couldn't even compete. And so I was not able to retain someone that I felt like I was making progress with because of the structure as it was. And then also I can say the technical director is way under industry standards, such that if I had to replace that person, I would not be able to have a qualified candidate to replace them. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here, is those two positions in particular need to be full-time and need to be comparable to city staff positions. So the current budget that you guys have, the first sheet of the two budgets, just want to point that this is what we're currently working with, which does provide us the hindrances of non-competitive salaries, no staff development in the budget, and in a technical field that is particularly challenging because we're supposed to stay on the cutting edge of what's coming out and what's happening. So, and for 4 years, we've been able to get by with online resources and minimal things, but to be able to offer true professional development for our staff members would only improve the service that we offer the residents.
So would that be an annual $1,000?
Yes.
What's the outreach budget? What does that actually entail?
So currently, the revenue that we use for outreach is the revenue that we bring in through contract productions. Fayetteville Public Access Television offers contract productions in the television center. If someone does not want to make their own video, we can produce their video for them at the television center for a relatively low fee to what happens on the outside. So our base price is $50 an hour. So, and then as we add staff members, we increase that a little bit, but ultimately it's a much lower rate than you would find on the outside, as it were. So the revenue that we generate from that, we then put in a trust account that we manage for the city, and then that money is allocated for outreach. But that fund is variable. Sometimes we have lots of contract productions. There have been historical years where we have not had many contract productions. So as a result, to guarantee that we at least have something that we know we can work with, I am proposing that we have a minimum of $1,000 in the budget as a base outreach that we would then look at spending with, I would say the thing that we lack the most at the moment is physical presence. I would like to see more of a physical presence. I just this week priced the sides of buses, when looking at things that provide some sort of signage, some sort of, when people are just strolling through their day, I want them to be able to see that, hey, there's Fayetteville Public Access Television. I should find out more about that. So we have historically tried things like on water bills. We paid one, I think back in 2013, 2012, we had a pamphlet included with water bills, and tried that and really saw no tangible results from that. We have historically purchased ads with the Fayetteville flyer ads that go on the side, and we did see more traction with online advertising. So those sorts of relationships would be the kind of relationships that we would want to pursue. And then with that trust fund money, we would then be purchasing our like pens and koozies and t-shirts and physical items that we would pass out for that sort of stuff as well. So this would be the base, and then we would be supplementing that with revenue that we bring in. And we have historically have been bringing in around $2,000 a year. But really, ultimately, that's just not even a scratch on the surface. I was sad to find out that the buses are very expensive. And
Could those funds roll over to the next year?
probably not. The trust fund can.
Yes, it does.
But the budgeted funds probably could not. So we would want to find ways to
Plug that in.
plug those in and provide that foundation.
So you got 2,000 roughly in the fund from this year, or was that last year? From income?
This year, we have generated more than $2,000 in contract productions.
And then you're asking for another 1,000 to
That's-
go, so
that's
you'd be looking
correct.
around 3,000.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
It's gonna be tough to do anything on a massive scale like you're wanting to do for $3,000 a year. You gotta get really, really creative.
It's true.
With it.
But every little bit helps.
Sure.
This increase would definitely give us more of a platform to work from than we have currently.
Yeah, sure.
So previous attempts with the mailer with the water bill, that came out of the $2,000 trust fund account?
That's correct. Yeah, we've been paying for our own advertising for the last 4 years.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this. I did some back of the napkin math here. I've got a change of a year over year change of about $3,000 on staff increases. Is that correct? That's at 3%. Is it year over year, or is it overall for the 4 years total?
So it would be a year-to-year increase. So
Of the
what we're proposing for this year is the 153 number.
Right.
And then next year, the
Automatically.
salary number would automatically be 3% more.
Okay.
It's not 3% total, it's just 3%
Right.
of the salary.
Just
See,
3% of
the salary.
salaries.
That's right. So basically for the next, this year and the next 4 years, the base number is 153,570.
Okay.
It's just next year, there's that little bit of the 3% bump
Built in, yeah.
based on the salary only. And then the next year, the 3% cost of living and so on. But all these other numbers stay the same for the period of 5 years.
Okay.
Even insurance?
You should, yeah.
Should I say that again?
Even insurance?
Yes. I mean, no, I'm sorry, the insurance stays fixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
The insurance packages that we're offering the full-time people are up to $4,000 a year towards their health insurance. I know that for myself and for my director of education who have families, then we pay on top of that, but that's what's allocated for the individual.
See.
So that's where that $12,000 number comes from. It's three people at $4,000 a year.
All right.
Excuse me, some people, particularly in the public, maybe on city council, would want to ask, I think, what are we comparing, for instance, the two technical people on the staff?
That's a great question.
What jobs in our city, what are the commercial TV stations? Do you have any idea?
That would not, commercial television stations would not be a comp that would be applicable. Here,
city-
from the city website,
Okay,
I've got underneath, video production technician salaries are 22 to 34 monthly is the range that they recruit at. And so what I'm proposing is right in the middle of that for our people, for my technical director and for my educational director. It would be in the middle of that. And then a comparable position to my position would be something along the lines of the office manager of the water and sewer. They represent and manage an operation that is interestingly enough, wastewater treatment is also something that contracts with an outside company to manage that for them. So it's a somewhat comparable position, and that also, what I'm proposing for my position would also be in the middle, the lower middle of that number. So that's from our website, from the City of Fayetteville website, those are comparable positions. And then these also include full city benefits and that are even better than the benefits that we would be offering, because we're not addressing things like retirement and that sort of thing, but we are at least covering health care. Does that answer your question?
And with the added increase in salary expenses, do you feel comfortable in the future trying to retain the individual that left for Little Rock or someone in that position?
Yes.
You feel you have more manageable funds for
Yes.
being competitive?
Having that position be part-time was very difficult because I was always, split between. I would have to be okay with them working on other things and having to accommodate another work schedule. But more importantly, someone who's working in a part-time position is always looking for that full-time opportunity. So I felt like they were just, biding their time until they can find something that was full-time. So being able to, especially with the Director of Education being the person who interfaces with the students, having a consistent person there who can develop those relationships and build those relationships and be consistent, I feel like it's very valuable and would help us with our growth. We saw a dip when we lost YK. Things kind of did, and then I have to retrain a Director of Education, which takes a minute. And then that person has to develop new relationships with old users, and we have to get everybody comfortable with that. So being able to avoid that process will definitely help our operation.
What do you think are some questions or some reasons why the council may not approve your request?
Well, when it comes to frequently asked questions about the public access operation, the first thing that I would say, having done this now for 3 years, one of the first challenges we run into is the perception of how public access is funded. People don't really know how public access is funded. They know that it's tax dollars. And so that's a very broad statement, the term tax dollars. So what I would very much encourage the city to consider is really attaching the franchise fees that they collect from the cable providers to this operation. That is the model in other public access channels across the nation. When you look up public access channels, they'll say, we are allocated X amount of funds from the service provider, from the franchise fees. We are allocated this amount, and that's how we run our public access channel. So the city of Fayetteville collects over $1 million a year in franchise fees from Cox and AT&T. And what we are proposing with our increase represents roughly 15% of that revenue.
Do we know what they do with that additional revenue?
So that revenue goes into the general fund with sales tax. It all gets lumped together.
It's stirred up and kind of, you lose perspective.
Gotcha.
So, and then when you say it's tax dollars, people tend to feel like you're talking about property tax. Like you're literally taking dollars out of my pocket for this. Now, at the increased rate, if you divide that across the number of Fayetteville residents, it comes to about $2 a resident per year. So even if we were taking your tax dollars, if you consider the fact that you can come take classes and check out equipment and then have this opportunity to be involved with this thing for the price of $2 a year, it does seem, like a very low amount. So, but once again, the perception, it's very important that I think that the community perceive that this is supported by franchise fees that they're already paying. Your franchise fees on your Cox cable bill is a pass-through. You have it as a line item on your bill. So it's not like we're actually getting this money from Cox. Cox is already charging this money to the residents. And now we're taking a bit of that money and giving them an opportunity to engage with that resource. So, and then the other thing that often comes up is, well, why don't you seek outside funding for the operation? Why don't you try to find grants or philanthropy or something along those lines? And the problem is, as I mentioned before, since 90% of our operation is staffing services, if we do find a grant to support the operation one year, that grant may not be available in a subsequent year, and that would put the whole operation at risk. So I feel like this is something that if the city wants to be able to provide and sustain this operation, it needs to be safe in its funding.
Question.
Yes.
That Cox and AT&T funding, that line item you mentioned, is that attached only to television, or does it also apply to those who subscribe to internet only?
You'll find it in your bill, your line item, little franchise fee ends up being like so many cents.
But it does apply to both?
It does.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, very
Mhm.
good, very good. All right. So I figure this to be a change in the overall budget that I got from the city, the entire city budget, of about 0.03%. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay, all right, because I see a annual budget and work program, the total budget being about 145 million, well, exactly $145,205,000. So if that's correct, then those are my numbers.
It is a very,
You put
very.
it like that. You put it like that.
I thought I should add that little bit of perspective.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective.
How did I suppose you said that you arrived to the 3% cost of living was equivalent to that of the city, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I expected to come and see the numbers and them to be very liberal. I'm finding them to be the opposite.
Oh, thank you.
So much to where I'm wondering if more could be done with more in the future. Not at present. I don't think it's a fresh idea